Amsterdam FinTech Week. Let me just briefly start with the introduction of the theme and myself, and then we start with the poll, and then I will introduce all the panelists for today. So my name is Menno van Leeuwen. I've been working in banking for over 2 decades, always involved in new initiatives, setting departments up, creating new job roles, job titles. That's what I like to do. So currently I also have like separate projects running, which focus on, well, what I call double impact. So I really love to bring value to society in initiatives I'm working on. 2 big ones. One is about money management. So I was at the base of developing a money management solution for the daughter company of ABN AMRO, and learned that people really struggle with finances today, and also people you would not expect to struggle. So that's one side of sustainability. And the other is an acceleration program for ABN AMRO to help businesses improve on the practical side of their sustainability challenges. So that's what I do. And I got into contact with Don, which I already know for many years, of Holland FinTech, about the topic of financial inclusion, which I think is really getting more and more important, and also where I see momentum for double impact. So it's not only about social responsibility, that we all should do this and play our role and serve like underserved needs markets, but I think there is also business value. So technology could help us to really improve propositions, and make people more confident when they make financial decisions. And at the same time, there's a business model for banks and fintechs. So that's what I wanted to explore with you. The upcoming session we have until 2 max. And yeah, well, I deep dived into financial inclusion. So for me, it has been about money management and financial stress. But if you take a look at it in a more broader sense, it is about individuals and businesses giving them full access to financial services, having it useful, so really making it work for them in an easy way, and also affordable. So those 2 elements I like to highlight in our session. Is it useful? Is it affordable? And then we can talk about the topics of transaction, payments, lending, insurance, or maybe even advice. So covering all the potential banking needs. And that's financial inclusion to me. But as I said, you could tackle it a little bit even wider. So also involve human rights in it, underserved groups you want to reach. So that's why I thought, well, let's ask the audience. We have like 26 viewers in, and maybe Anna, you can share the poll with us, the first poll, about how do you view financial inclusion, and what's most important for you? Which element of financial inclusion, as I just gave a very broad definition, which does appeal to you?
Are we going to see the polls somewhere, Menno?
That is about the magic. So I think Anna is typing them right now.
Okay, because I see this column that says polls.
Yeah. So there you will see. But so if Anna will share their poll, I think it's good to turn also to you. So please share your view on the poll. But without further ado, let's already move on to an introduction round. Please introduce yourself, the company you work for, and what view you have on financial inclusion. Where are you focusing on these days? And maybe Dora from Asimo, you could start, please.
Yeah, sure. Good afternoon, everyone, wherever you are. It's a pleasure to be here, and even though my first remote event, I wish we could meet in the hallways and talk, but we will do our best in this forum and platform. Hopefully you'll find it interesting. My name is Dora. I'm the CEO of Azimo. Azimo is a digital cross-border payments company. Why are we at Holland FinTech, you might ask? Holland is our second home. We are not keen to talk about Brexit, but obviously we were started in the UK, and Europe is a large market for us. So we also got regulated in the Netherlands, and our second home now is Amsterdam. Hence Holland FinTech for us, and keen to continue being part of the ecosystem. What does financial inclusion mean for Azimo? I mean, Azimo was created because sending money abroad has been quite expensive over the years, quite cumbersome, usually dominated by the offline players, the brick and mortars, very fragmented market. And we believe that technology can make that better, both in terms of access, but also in terms of speed and price above everything. So migrants, in my mind, tend to be an underserved group. And especially when they first arrive in the host country, quite hard for them to get access to financial services in general. And the first thing they want to do is send money back home, right? And this is what we strive to do, offer more transparency and easy way to send money, because usually they do support their families abroad. At the same time, there's an element of financial inclusion in the receiving side. It tends to be that the money goes to a lot of women because they support the families on the other side. The different payment methods that we now offering, such as mobile wallets, that we believe can help increase financial inclusion. That's in a very general overview.
Yeah, thank you. So if you the poll is on, so also for the viewers, if you go to the poll section next to the chat, you can already vote. I don't know if you can see it, Dora. So what would you vote? Because
I just voted, and I think I also said is helping the underserved.
Helping the underserved, yeah. But also so you also mentioned diversity with reaching women with your proposition. Yeah. Okay, so then we
sorry to interrupt,
yeah,
but I just want to make sure that the 20 viewers, they know on your screen somewhere there should be a tab that says polls where you can submit, and it's more fun if it's interactive. So just so you know, because we only have like 10 votes and we have 21 people. So sorry.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Go, to invite our audience to keep it interactive, and also you can share questions you have in the chat. We will also look at that. But indeed, please keep on voting, and maybe Go, you already were taking the floor, so maybe you can introduce yourself.
Okay, sure. So my name is Go Hiroshi. Everybody calls me Go. I work at Cardiff Lab, which is a team inside of BNP Paribas Cardiff. And BNP Paribas Cardiff deals with insurance inside of this, the banking group. I come from Japan, as in I come from BNP Paribas Cardiff in Japan. And now I work at Paris at the corporate team. And at Cardiff Lab, our role is to help accelerate a lot of the projects, help with innovation, and also work with startups. So in my specific title, it says Startup Investments and Relations, Acceleration Leader. So basically projects that we do with startups to help accelerate the projects that we have using open innovation. This part is where I really try and help using, I guess, a lot of different techniques that many of you are probably familiar with, for example, doing things like a startup would using MVPs, but also really understanding the corporate governance and, showing that, I would say, the solid foundation that large financial firms have and trying to find that balance in between. So that's kind of what I do. And for me, like the financial inclusion thing, like I'm seeing the polls, and I think we have the most votes in helping the underserved. This is an important theme for BNP Paribas, and recently we've been selected as one of the banks that are really excelling in this area of financial inclusion. And I think it's important because not only is it there's business objectives there, but eventually for any company to survive in the very long term, a society as a whole, through its interconnectivity, really needs to be successful and needs to be maybe even happy Sorry for using kind of fairy dust words of happiness, but I think behind all this finance and everything, why we do these things and happiness, and this is something that we need to achieve. And I think larger corporations are becoming more and more aware of this. So these are things that I hope we can exchange on today.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm also interested in the startup examples you see where you collaborate on. We will zoom into that area. So let's take a look at the solutions we see. So thank you very much, Go. And we also have in the panel, we have Michiel Bijlsma. He's from the Dutch Central Bank, De Nederlandse Bank. Michiel, can you introduce yourself, please?
Hello, yes. Can everybody hear me? Because my connection seems to fail now and then.
It's clear.
I'm also one of those guys who didn't vote because the setup is a bit unstable, so I'm hesitant to scroll through the screen. Anyways, I've been working at the Dutch Central Bank in the payment units now for 1.5 years, and I have a history in finance and policy questions on finance. I've worked at the Dutch Competition Authority. I've worked at the Netherlands Bureau for Economic Policy Analysis for a while, which is an economic policy institute that does research and economic prognosis for the Dutch government. And now I'm working at the Dutch Central Bank. And obviously, I'm working in the payments unit, and accessibility or inclusion is one of the goals that's actually enshrined in our mission. We strive for accessible, efficient, and safe payments system. And of course, accessibility means that it's financially, that it's inclusive. So I've been thinking about what I actually mean. What would you actually mean by financial inclusion? And I think helping the underserved is the most obvious answer there. I think access to important parts of finance shouldn't depend on ethnicity, social status, age, digital knowledge, etc. So I guess that for me defines financial inclusion.
Thank you. And you explained when we were the first talk, Michiel, that you also do lots of behavior analysis, right, of consumers that you involved at.
Yes, so we have a regular poll where we actually look at payments behavior by consumers, which payments methods do they use, how do they spend their money, etc. So that's where we can, that's our entry point also for analyzing whether some groups are actually experiencing difficulties in accessing payment systems.
Okay, I think it's good also to bring that knowledge in when we talk about what's useful in financial solutions. What do you see really being used at the moment? And our final panelist is Jake Abma. He is from the ING, but like many of the panelists, it's not his only job. So we're all hashers, right? We do separate things next to each other, but reinforcing each other as well. So Jake, please introduce yourself.
Yeah, so good afternoon. My name is Jake Abma. I'm the accessibility lead at the ING Bank. I'm involved in accessibility for the last 10 years, and since 5 years we have a dedicated team focusing on accessibility within the ING. And our purpose within the ING is making sure that accessibility is part of the engineering culture and all related processes. And Menno, as you just mentioned, I'm also heavily involved at the W3C in the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines Working Group, and there's all kind of task forces within that working group for accessibility maturity models, creating a new standard, and some other subgroups. So what we do from within the W3C is writing the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, and that's like the global standard for preventing barriers in ICT products. I am also involved in a couple of other working groups, and I think one of the most interesting one we recently started is I'm the chairman of the WIT working group, and that's the working group for inclusiveness and accessibility from within the Dutch Payment Association. And that is multiple financial institutions, the big banks, who just try to see where we can collaborate and communicate about accessibility. And yeah, for me, financial inclusion has different angles. Also from within accessibility, it's just very important to focus on innovation for financial products. And we have seen that for the last, well, at least 2 decades now. And my special focus is to prevent barriers in ICT products. So content will be more accessible to a wider range of people with disabilities. So what we see is accessibility is often not a barrier to create innovative products, but a lot of innovation for people with disabilities has found their way to the mainstream. We all know, of course, when we watch television, the subtitles or speech recognition or screen readers, but there is so much more of innovation created for people with disabilities we now use on a daily basis. So if we specifically look at what we do at the W3C, is we focus on a wide range of people with disabilities like blindness, low vision, deafness, limited movement, etc., etc. But we also focus specifically on all kinds of different devices like desktops, laptops, tablets, and mobile devices. And what we would like to do is make sure that there will be a lot of innovation within ICT products, but specifically when you innovate, that you know about all the barriers you may introduce innovating new products and preventing those barriers so that all innovations will be accessible to all people.
Okay, can you name an example, Jake, of a barrier you might introduce with a new innovation?
There's a lot of barriers. We have defined 87 success criteria from within WCAG, and some of them are a little bit more difficult to explain. Others are really easy, but it goes like from when something is visual, you need to have a text alternative, and it doesn't need to be on the screen per se, but the text alternative is used by people with low vision, with dyslexia, people who are blind, but there's a lot of other ways this text can be used. Other ones are more like, before you go into a process, make sure that upfront you communicate everything needed within that process. And that when you have like session timeouts, that there are people who really want to do a specific process, but they just need a little bit more time. So you need to have a system in place where they can extend their time limits, so they also have enough time and they will not be locked out because of all kind of different circumstances they're in. You never know how people use your products. You never know in what circumstances they use their products, and you never know if they need a little bit more time for whatever reason. So those are just 2 very simple examples.
Interesting. Yeah, but that makes it more concrete. And it's interesting that you mentioned the visual and the text. I always see lots of banking products being lots of text and lots of numbers and percentages. So I really try to push on getting those products or services more visual, so you can just see it and digitally grab it. But then there is a downside that if you cannot see it, you have to go back to the numbers. So that's nice. Let's take a look at the poll panel. So not everybody voted, but as well, I try to avoid the category other, because that will be always number 1. But now the votes are on helping the underserved. I think that's also a quite broad expression of how you can improve financial inclusion. And actually, our missing panel member, that is Marta McGandy. She couldn't make it, unfortunately, but she did share her view on financial inclusion. And also about the underserved we normally think of. So she really sees that much of the discussions and the propositions are on the poor, which is of course is a very important group to be serving for win-win-win for all of us. But she highlighted, well, let's also try to see specific groups such as elderly, such as people with a mental disease. Those kind of underserved groups really need affordable and useful financial products. So this brought me to the second poll. Maybe I can ask. Oh, it's already on. Great teamwork, Anna. Yeah, you can put it on. No, it's okay. So the second poll is about these underserved groups. So I'm very curious if you talk about these underserved groups, which one do you think we should focus on more? We as a fintech finance industry. And I'm sorry, Dora, there is no category migrants on it.
Most people associate migrants with poor, unfortunately. So we can.
And is that so? Is that a false assumption? How would you?
I think I would dare say it's a false assumption on the definition of income, right? You don't have a credit history in the place where you're at, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you do not have the earning capacity, and it's unfair to bucket everyone as poor because it's not a certain threshold. So I would say that there is a correlation in people's minds between migrants and their earning ability and capability, unfortunately. But I'm sure there's ways around it. But I wanted to make also an interesting comment to what you're saying about reading the fine print, right? And there's a similar assumption we make about the elderly as well, that they are not tech savvy. But I think during COVID, you probably all have seen that more and more elderly, like my mother, for example, she cannot live without the iPad, right? Because the only thing she could do is to see families, to be connected to a device. So it's all about adapting the technology to a way that serves those groups as well, rather than saying, oh, they are not up for using it, right? Be it the font, be it anything else we can do in the UX to is simple, which is what Jake was talking about. Same thing as, migrants are probably, when they arrive in a country, the only thing they have with them is probably a smartphone. Maybe a cheap smartphone, but they will most probably, all of them, have a smartphone. And this makes them open to financial services that are available on those devices. I digressed a bit.
Yeah, so there are a lot of assumptions if you're talking about so groups, right? So you already make an assumption that it's a needed group. I don't know if you've seen the program. So later on today we have started bootcamp, also part of the Amsterdam FinTech Week, and there are 9 startups pitching, and one of them is also a startup focusing on Africa and migrants, but it's helping people who want to invest in Africa. To invest in their homeland, and I think that is a different setting already. That you're not talking about payments for people in need, but investing from countries outside developing countries to developing countries. So it's quite a powerful proposition. So check it out if you are interested. On 3, there is the Startup Bootcamp demo day. Let me see if we already have some votes in to make any conclusions. Lots say it's the poor. So Menno, your pitch didn't really work. It is about the poor because that's the who likes to elaborate on it. Some of the panel members voted for.
Yeah, like maybe I can make a comment building on kind of what Dora was mentioning about migrants and their association with being poor. Like, obviously, their capacity to make money, obviously, it doesn't always equal like their social status. Me also, I've spent my life moving from place to place, and if you're not like brought up as part of that country, it's hard to get access to basic things, even just getting an ID. Like in France, you know, to be honest, I really struggled getting the permit for me to be working with BNP Paribas, right? So it should be easy, right? And it's still hard. I couldn't imagine how difficult it would be for a refugee that needs to leave their country because of some political reasons, and they've somehow found their way to, let's say, the Netherlands, and you know, they're just with their brother, and they're like 15 years old. Like it's just so challenging at that point. And I think right now we still have as many, we have many banks here and fintechs that have investment from VC. We have the capacity right now to try and solve a problem that wouldn't immediately be profitable, right? And this topic that we're discussing, it spans over, like this list that we have here in this poll, spans over so many different difficult topics that I think we can't come with a simple topic. And you know, just to disclose a little bit of backstage talk, but you know, we decided today that maybe we'd want a call to action. And I think that, you know, to solve all these problems, maybe we can't, but maybe a little bit of awareness that underlying all of these issues, maybe, you know, the direct pursuit of immediate profit is something that we need to start moving away from, to really capture this problem solving that we could do in all these areas. So, you know, I think this is a key point when we try and approach all of these problems, is not say, okay, immediately, how are we going to make money out of this? How are we going to raise capital from this? Because, you know, working with a lot of startups and VCs, you know, obviously you have these huge exits sometimes, and it's amazing how much funds people can bring, and eventually that solves a problem. At the same time, you know, I'd like to see that slowly we start raising awareness, like this event. I think it's really good that we're doing this panel discussion, and we start trying to solve problems from a different angle of how can we make money, but more about how can we make more people happy, or have more, I would say, a more fundamental impact on society. Because eventually, even if we have a lot of money, we're not going to be very happy. It's maybe the freedoms that we gain through the financial capabilities that allow us to have food, have shelter, that eventually lead us to being happy. But there's other things too that I think, for example, banks, by giving people accounts, or giving them some kind of accountability or some kind of reference to, yeah, I have a bank account, you know, because some people are afraid to take the risks, and they're so afraid of protecting themselves from risks that they don't give the opportunity to these people that I would say are underserved. So for me, sorry, that was a long-winded answer, but you know, this is what I feel looking at this poll.
Yeah, and I think it's an interesting part. So short-term profit drivenness, I am aware of, because, for instance, if you work for a big bank, it is about, of course, improving your profitability to your stakeholders. And of course, we have lots of discussions about why we should not only focus on short-term profit, and what the long-term value is of, for instance, focusing on youngsters for financial education, or other groups like elderly. There's an easier business model. That's a great example. I would love to steer on long-term profitability, or long-term happiness, or lower financial stress that you can measure financial well-being. But it's of course, it's not the way banks are steered right now, or companies are steered. So I'm curious. Maybe Michiel, you can give us a little bit of a view on how you see. We could.
Yeah, I think I can tie into that. And because I think when you ask the question, which underserved group should we do more for, then you're basically asking the question, who are the people that are underserved, and why are they underserved? And especially the why, of course, there's a reason that these people are underserved, because often the reason is that it's just more expensive to serve these people. So I guess one big part of what commercial organizations, banks, fintechs, etc., try to do when working on inclusiveness is actually lowering the cost of serving these people, right? By devising products, interfaces, etc. But I think, and that's all good and very laudable. But there remains a group that I think and that remains underserved, that remains costly to be served, and it's actually not might not be that profitable actually to serve for banks. And also, it's very hard to actually pinpoint this group because, for example, when I think about the research that we
I think we have a unstable connection.
for bank, we use panels.
Michiel,
We ask people questions. But of course, there's a group of people that are not in that panel, and they're actually very hard to find and to approach and to actually determine whether they are underserved, what they need, and how you could actually serve those people. So I think in the end, we will also need. We cannot just depend on the goodwill of, in the end, of commercial organizations to serve these people. We also in the end will need some kind of let's say minimum levels of service that are required. And for example, you might think of whether you actually want what role you want for cash in your society, because there's a group of people who want to use cash. And how do you, on the one hand, get all those people that could actually use different means of payments that are more efficient or digital to switch to those means of payments, but on the other hand, also keep on serving the group of people that still sticks to cash. And I think that's a kind of in a nutshell, a dilemma that plays a role in many areas where you try to
If I might add something here, works for I would think that good examples where adoption, speed of digital financial services or cash or any of the above, always needs a little bit of a push from either the ecosystem, right? Being the regulator, being in the organizations. Clearly, financial institutions don't see that segment as profitable, and they would probably need to be forced to do so. But each part of the ecosystem needs to play a certain role to get there, right? And it's kind of always sad or funny, whichever word you want to use, that if you make more than 2,000, 3,000 euros, you get an account for free. And if you don't, then you have to pay a monthly fee. It should actually be the opposite at the end of the day, because the people who make less money could benefit from, at the beginning, at the start of their employment, from a free account. And the person who makes more than 3,000 can probably pay 2 euros so obviously you're cross-subsidizing your products, but I think this is all kind of needs to be both in the mission of the financial institution, but also other external factors need to be pushed that way, be it the regulator or outside organization. In my mind, it's hard to do, and I get it, but somehow this is the only way to get there, right? And smaller countries do it much faster. If you look at Sweden being digital, it's much harder to do it in a country of 200 million, the US, right? That's clear.
Yeah, and I think Jake, you already mentioned in your introduction how you focused on disabled needs with technology. And is there a business case discussion there? Because of course this technology has to be adopted and developed. I mean, and you cannot price them specifically for this group.
A business case is an interesting topic. And most people around the world who have been in the working field of accessibility, they are opposed to a business case because it's just very hard to prove how different people use your specific product in their own way. So it's really easy to make this business case to see what the spending power is of people with disabilities. And in general, there's like 20% of the world population is like 1.4 billion people who acknowledge they have a disability, but there's a lot of other people who also have disabilities. Hey, we already named the elderly, people with dyslexia, people with low vision who say they do not have a disability themselves, or maybe temporarily disabled. So what we also do from within the W3C is not looking specifically on specific persons who have a very specific disability, or maybe more, but we just use functional needs. So we bring them down to what are functional needs, and then we create functional outcomes, and basically they cover a lot of needs from a lot of different people. And what you can do when you have functional needs and functional outcomes, it's much more close to the ICT product itself. For instance, when you have like a graphic or an image, you need to have a text alternative. It's like the functional outcome. And then you don't have to know all the different ways people are using IT products. So what's very important when creating products is not focusing on one product for all, or one way of a product in a customer journey, or from within a user experience perspective. You just need to have a little bit more information on the different angles products are used, and make sure that that specific product you offer, that if you identify gaps, that you solve it with an alternative for that specific product. And in that way, it is much more close to the way we develop products, and it opens up insights in alternatives. I'll just name one very simple example. When you have like a system and you want to have another system to log in, and it's like a two-factor authentication, and then you want to use like a scanner, and then that scanner, you need to scan like a QR code on your screen. There's a lot of people who can use it, but there's also people who have their maybe their iPad mounted on a wheelchair, or they have motoric problems, so they cannot scan it, or they cannot see the screen. So there's always a group of people who cannot use that product, and then you need to. It's not a problem to innovate in that way, to create that product, but you need to know what the barriers are to provide an alternative on top of the product. And if you know the different perspectives, and you provide a fantastic new innovative product, make sure that people can also log in, for instance, with facial recognition or with their fingerprint, or that there's always an alternative to use that specific innovation, and then you are on the safe side. So that would be my advice, to always go on and continue with your innovative products, but involve people who also know the barriers or the gaps, or look in a specific way to identify them, and to make sure they're on the agenda to also provide the alternatives for all the other people.
Yeah, what I like about it is that it's an agile approach. So you don't build a niche proposition for a niche target group, but you see what is lacking and try to reshape it, moderate it towards a certain need.
Exactly, niche products in general do not work, and there's a lot of, if you have niche products like a specific website for mobile, or a specific website for people who can't see the screen, suddenly you need to build like 3 different products, while one is often enough. Yeah. And you update one, but you forgot to update the other one, and you end up with legacy. And what's very interesting is you also end up with a lot of problems when they call you. People have a problem, they call to the call center, but that call center only knows like the default website where they log in. And if you provide alternatives, often you have like a communication problem because they are in another environment. So just one good product serving all people is always preferable.
Yeah, and I think we have 15 minutes left. I think you're already highlighting some really concrete examples of solutions or solution directions. So what I would want to do is to share solutions you see in the market. Maybe it's your own solution or a fintech you scouted or collaborated with that you think is a great example, who have really a proposition working for a specific underserved group, to inspire us all, right? To share that idea. And the one thing, just to bridge this, I thought of Jake when you mentioned your agile approach on this. So I've worked on a money management solution where people could segregate money in separate buckets. And we saw this very important, for instance, for people who had irregular income, setting money aside for VAT taxes, a clear use case for that. But when we worked on this, so we launched the product, we saw also people wanted to use our buckets, our wallets, also because they really have big money troubles. So monthly issues, even when they have a fixed income, they just mess up. And we collaborated now with a partner who is working together with municipalities to keep people out of debt. And they add budget advices to our digital proposition. So that's a route we would not have ever taken ourselves, because we're not into advice. It's all digital. But through a smart partnership, you can reach certain target groups, and also with the business case, because the business case there is that they help these people getting into debt, and getting into debt is like a municipality cost of, in the Netherlands, it's 11 billion a year. But also they are returning lots of fixed costs they are returning, and this is also a cost trigger. So your health insurance or your rent, people just return it just before the end of the month. And they made an agreement with companies that give a bonus for people who do not return their fixed costs. So I think this is an example I thought of for an underserved group and in a proposition. Maybe Dora, go, Michiel. You have a fintech solution you think that really is useful?
I think I have to talk about myself now, right? Obviously, yes, we use technology as much as we can to automate the process and make it easier, right? So traditionally, you go into a shop, you fill out many forms with a lot of fine print. Now, obviously, you do it easily on your smartphone or on the web page. Another important thing is that obviously we remember you as customer, right? So the second time you do it, everything is there, and you can actually repeat your transaction with a few clicks. And it's not, obviously, we do a lot of compliance as well, being regulated and want to ensure good transactions go through the system. We automate the ID verification. There's plenty of solutions out there you can use to do this, which makes it easier. And within a few seconds, someone gets their KYC done digitally. Another interesting example, I would dare say, that came up in COVID on the recipient side. There was a lot of disruption for countries where cash pickup was very common. And there was a lockdown, for example, in the Philippines, and people just could not access the shops. So this is where solutions like mobile wallets became more popular in a short period of time. But COVID made it more of a step change into people preferring mobile wallets, because at least people could receive the money, could pay some bills, not fulfill 100% of their needs. But this was something also that technology enabled us to do in these difficult times.
Yeah, great example of how the COVID gave a forward push, right, for certain solutions.
Yeah, both on the sending and the receiving side. Yeah.
We even saw it in Germany. Yeah, go, please.
Yeah, no, I was just, listening to Jake and also, Menno, what you were describing. I was really curious on what kind of KPIs that everybody is focusing on when they try and innovate or try and do these things, because like you mentioned, the iterations that we do at some point to make a judgment call on whether you're going the right way or not, you look at some kind of data point to judge whether this test is going in the right way or your business is going in the right direction. And personally, because we discussed disability and then also a little bit of this this financial inclusion concept on a broader scale, I think we also have to understand that right now, considering all of the mechanisms and the capabilities we have to use data to make people convert more, to send more or receive more, obviously if it's profiting the customer in the end, I'm sure it's okay. But a lot of times we end up chasing KPIs that game the system so that we can make, I guess, kind of a success on our side, and it doesn't equal success for everyone. And I was really thinking, how can we choose the right KPIs so that we're chasing after things that really result in financial inclusion, or raising society at the fundamental basis. So what I'm trying to say is the areas that, for example, we work in at Cardiff Lab, we have a special portfolio of startups that we invest in called the C Entrepreneurs, and we focus on specific pillars of why we want to invest in a startup. So I mentioned about using open innovation to accelerate. Sure, we can accelerate our existing activities, but we can also use this investment to accelerate in areas that we're not particularly have ongoing projects on right now. Like we have two startups, Quesky and Lana in Latin America, that do things like payday loans and also provide payment capabilities for example, it's one is Lana is a spin-off of Cabify, which allows also a payment solution between cab drivers. And this is from the company to the cab driver, sorry. These are small things that they do with technology that directly we can invest in, but through this portfolio we can. And it has no direct profit for Cardiff immediately. But I think that the fact that we're able to do this because we're thinking, okay, how can we do more financial inclusion? How can we really reach out and make society a better place? I think this is something that's a KPI that we set, and that's why we're able to pursue it. And I think it's up to people like us who are kind of in the forefront of this discussion to start mentioning this and putting into the company's objectives, or maybe into the project objective, or even in that sprint objective, to focus on that thing, that brings more benefit beyond just good gains for us in that one project or that one business cycle. So this is some feedback I'm having listening to everybody.
Is there maybe a role for regulators, or sorry, Michiel, for central banks? For instance, if I just could steer on financial wealth or financial well-being, or improving the stress or reducing the stress, of course, of our customers, if I could measure that and having that as a KPI, would you see that possible, Michiel?
I'm not going to comment on, let's say, adjusting regulatory principles to include inclusion as, let's say, a way of regulating banks. But and obviously I'm not I'm not from the market, so I don't work on market solutions. But there are two things I know. One thing is fintechs are good in experimenting, are good in developing new things, doing A/B tests, quickly changing things. And I think that's one part of financial inclusion. You need to figure out what works. And I think there's a big role to play for let's say in the new digital world, for fintechs, etc. But the second thing is that there's a group, and this is maybe actually the biggest. Now I have thought about it a little bit more. The biggest issue is getting those people on board who are not digitally savvy. Because to approach them, you actually might need a third person to talk to them or to do things. And that's expensive, of course, because then you need, if you have a digital way of approaching people, you can scale up easily and quickly and cost effectively. But if you really need to interact with people face to face, that's not possible. And also you need to be able to reach those people. And that's not a core competence of banks or financial institutions. So I think that there's an important, if you want to go towards more financial inclusion of that group of people, you need to liaise, you need to develop new ways of cooperating with, let's say, those people who are actually in touch with those people who are digitally not that well developed. And I think that's a big challenge to actually develop those corporations in a robust way.
Yeah, I didn't try to corner you to get the new KPIs, Michiel. Don't you worry. But it's also about creating room and momentum to steer on experiments which are having different KPIs. Mm-hmm. So for instance, in the experiment I was mentioning about these fixed costs, we do a questionnaire. So we ask participants in the beginning and after a couple of months how happy they are, how they're feeling, right? Because it's not only about numbers, it's about it's about what it does to people, and that is very difficult to get in a business case model, but it is where the value is at.
Yeah, and I think, well, you asked for a role for central bank. I think one role might be to facilitate cooperation between different groups, either from the commercial side, but also from the non-profit side, from the more societal side. So to bring those groups together and to find solutions that work, and also kind of do the, let's say, tell the story to other regulators that might not be that not look that favorably on corporations.
Yeah, I completely agree there. I think there needs to be a lot more, I would say, communication on the goals that the companies have, because, you know, I think everybody knows that, you know, financial firms, especially after the financial crisis, don't have a really, you know, a good view maybe in the public's eye. But, you know, a company it consists of all kinds of different people. And I think that people are starting to realize we can't keep going in this direction. And I hope that, you know, the governments and the corporations can start realizing that, you know, maybe they aren't just out to, you know, cash out on people's, I would say, you know, ill fate, right? Because sometimes that happens. And I think to balance that, you create really high interest rates, for example, to balance your risk. But I think if more people can work together and really share these common goals that they have, even with the government and the corporations, I think that there could be a new age in how we do finance, which is more inclusive. And also the goals that the companies set are going to be governed by what laws they have to adhere to. Right? And it shouldn't be a game of cat and mouse, but really more of a collaboration. So this is something that I'd really like to see more.
And what do you think of involving also tech companies and commerce companies who are, of course, also having a relationship with our customers, making them offers for buying products or subscriptions, after pay kind of services?
Can I make a short comment about that? Because I just wanted to get back on what Mikael was saying. I do think that the channels that are non-digital are very key when you think of financial inclusion, because some people don't have even access to smartphones or the internet. But I think technology has a huge role there, because up to that point where that person it doesn't have technology to connect them, you can make everything efficient up to there. And that way lower costs and make that human interaction affordable, or you know, I think that view is also important. Yeah. So I think technology plays a huge role, and you know, I think it also makes sense they hired someone like me from the IT industry to join the banking group, because that technology is really going to be not just for efficiency, but also to reach out to more people that don't have access today. So I think it's a mix of analog and technology.
If I were to add to that, obviously,
yeah, Dora. Yeah,
the direction of travel.
From all.
Yeah, the direction of travel is for more people to have access at the end of the day, digital access, right? And it may not be everyone, but you know, it's exponential growth. I think we will get there. Technology makes it cheaper. If I were to represent fintechs and say one of the things that's important about us as the new entrants is also to be sustainable, right? Because we are still working in financial services, and the goal is to reach as many people as possible. But we also have to be sustainable as businesses. Otherwise, this whole recipe will not work. It's not bad to be profitable. You actually have to be profitable and sustainable in order to serve more customers in the long run. And I think that's something that we, for example, are focusing as a company.
Yeah. So I would agree, but not only because we are 2 o'clock over now, so we have had this panel for 1 hour, and I think we ran through nearly half of our questions we have prepared. So this proves that the financial inclusion is a topic to discuss more about with each other, and indeed involve the broader ecosystem to really create more action. And I hope our viewers would also agree. You have been responding a little bit through the polls, but please use the hop-in functionality to leave your contacts or approach one of us via LinkedIn, because I think there is still lots of work to do to really bring more financial inclusion to the world. I would like to thank the panel members for now. So Jake, Michiel, Go, and Dora for your active contribution. And I hope to see you all later on this week at one of the Amsterdam FinTech events. And just mentioning 3 o'clock is the Startup Bootcamp demo day. Thank you very much.
Thank you. It's great talking. See you guys.
Okay.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye.